It's the 2014 chain-driven sport touring shootout. We're in the desert. It's a little bit hot out here, 115 or something degrees yesterday. We tried to stay in elevations, Mount Palomar, Idlewild. Now we're just above Borrego Springs. Chain-driven sport touring. They're a lot lighter than the sport touring shootout we did with the shaft drive bikes. Those bikes are getting heavy. They're almost touring bikes, chain-driven ones, between 1,000 and 1,200 cc's. We got three excellent bikes here, the Multistrada, which we've liked for a few years, the new Capo Nord, and the revised Kawasaki Ninja 1000. We've got quite a difference in price, but the capabilities are all pretty similar. We got anti-lock brakes, traction control, saddlebags, and we really got to get out of this heat because I think Tom might need some medical attention. So we're going to get up to some higher elevations and we'll report back to you later on. I'm happy to say we made it out of the desert, mostly alive. Got some nice cool breeze here in San Diego, and we've figured out a lot more about these sport touring bikes. When we did the shaft-driven sport touring bikes, we were kind of, they're comfortable, but we were kind of a little less enthralled by their heavy weight. So we're stepping down a size, chain-driven sport touring bikes. And even sport touring bikes, they don't even make that much clear sense because these look like adventure touring bikes and this looks like a sport touring bike. But really, they all have sporting capability that goes beyond the bigger bikes we had last month. These two bikes, 1200cc Italian, you figure they'd be a lot similar, but they're really different. The Ducati is very sharp, very firm. The Aprilia is kind of soft and more squishy. And then the Kawasaki kind of lies somewhere in between. It's a sporty bike. It matches the Ducati in many ways, but it doesn't have the ergonomic comfort of the more taller adventure style bikes. Tom, what can you say about these things?
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to check my health insurance coverage to see if I have to pay Sean for his CPR antics back there in Borrego Springs, but I'm happy to be alive and with us here in San Diego. I think something that what we realize when you're talking about the hardness of the Ducati, the softness of the Aprilia, the suspension on this is very soft. It's not something made for pushing to extremes in terms of sportability. Now, that's not to say though, for the right person or the right couple who are more interstate bound with big kind of swoopy kind of lines like this that aren't going to be out in these kind of like little switchback areas, the softness, the plushness of the seat, it really comprises a nice sport touring, leaning more on the touring side of the equation. It has good features, but if it came down, between the two of these kind of sport adventure tours that we've coined a phrase for, I'm still leaning towards the Ducati down there that Sean is rightly standing next to and petting.
And what can you say, Sean? How do these things compare in your eyes?
Well, I think, we've got two bookends and a book. You go from soft and plush and toury, arguably flawed in its suspension setup, to really kind of taut and nimble and sporty with decent comfort. The ergonomics just aren't very rangy. Not a lot of leg room, but there's more than there is to say on a super sport bike. Right. So you've got a bike that's good for, say, a trip to Laguna or something like that, but you wouldn't want to do an interstate trip in a straight line going flat for very long. Yeah. An hour is fine. 2 or 3 hours, you'd get pretty tedious pretty quick. Twisties, no problem at all day long. But the Ducati, it's right in between. It's almost as comfortable as the Capo is, and it's maybe not quite as buttoned down as the Kawasaki is when you're really flogging it in the tight stuff. The Kawasaki's fairly solid, but it does. It acquits itself really well when you ride it aggressively, and it's got that cool riding position where you've got medium width bars, not super wide, not super narrow, and you're kind of sitting up over them a little bit, but it invokes that kind of feeling. You get on it, you're like, oh, big dirt bike. Yeah. Kind of like the KTM 1290R. It's that real cool place to be where you can go as fast as you want to go, and then when you stop going fast, you're still comfortable.
I would have to say that, yeah, you jump on the Aprilia, you jump on the Ducati, you got these bars made by Leverage Incorporated, and then you go to the Kawasaki, and it actually has a nice bar setup. They rise back to you, they're splayed out, from the bike. Compared to any type of, true sport bike, it's going to feel very, ergonomic. But this bike, like you're saying, buttoned down, it handles incredibly well. Even with the narrower bars, you could put that thing anywhere you want in a corner, without the leverage of these other ones. I really like the handling on this Ninja.
Right. It's heavier, much heavier steering, but it's not unresponsive. It's just heavier. Steering weight, not curb weight.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Tom. The Aprilia would be a great bike to do a sport tour with your spouse or whatever, but when the pace heats up, you feel its extra weight. The Aprilia weighs more than the other ones, and it weighs significantly more than these other two. It's nearly 600 pounds. And the top box plays a role in its handling feel, like Sean's pointed out to us. But it's just a heavier motorcycle, and these two bikes I could take to a track day and have some fun on. I wouldn't feel so comfortable on the Aprilia.
Yeah, Kev, any track environment, this Aprilia is going to be outclassed. In the tighter switchback stuff that we were doing, this bike, you could feel it, doing this and then almost doing this at the same time, trying to go from side to side because, again, the suspension is too soft, and, maybe some of the higher weight back here. It's confidence inspiring, does not describe this motorcycle.
Yeah, at a fast pace, it shows its limitations. Back down a little bit, it's fine.
You can watch when I come into that corner coming down towards him. My body position on that's much different than these, and the reason is because of that soft suspension and the tail wagging the dog of that top case. And that is, on that bike, I'm as far forward, like on the gas cap with my body and my head as far forward inside as I can be, just to keep that rear suspension from fully compressing, because every time it would, the suspension will compress, and then that top box will react to the suspension bottoming out, and it'll throw a secondary wiggle in. So you get the first wallow as you go in the corner, it wallows, and then the top box takes the back of the motorcycle and does this, and that, to you as the rider, it feels like you're losing the front end. So if you get your weight all the way forward, it kind of helps that. And so I was trying to climb over that like a monkey just to, mitigate some of its handling quirks.
While we're Aprilia bashing, I think we should also mention that, surprisingly, because we haven't had this issue with an RSV or the Tuono, is it has some bad fueling, and its ride-by-wire is not spot on either. In throttle transitions or just trying to hold a steady throttle, it was searching all over the place, and there's not a like a cable feel when you're rolling into it.
Definitely not. It feels ride-by-wire, where you go down a step in technology to the Kawasaki, and it really feels like a better system because it does exactly what you want it to do. The throttle is directly connected to your wrist. The clutch is really easy to modulate, and the gear shifting is excellent. So it seems down on technology, but it really works very well. And speaking about electrical gremlins, we had an issue with the Ducati. We were fueling up, we're 1 billion degrees, and we go to press the start button. It's got a keyless fob, so you don't need to turn the key. But it didn't want to start, and it came up with a PIN code warning so you can access it if you lose your key or something. And no matter how many times we press the start button, it would keep popping up to the PIN code. And luckily we were able to contact the people at Newport Ducati, and they were able to, where we get the press bikes, and they were able to give us the PIN code and fire it up. And oddly, after that, it started up regularly.
See, when it's shut off and it's working properly, you press this and it flashes up right away, right?
Yes. So we pushed the button, 6 seconds ago, and then it pops up. Total delayed reaction. The key is here with us. We've shook it, turned it around, extended the blade, opened the gas cap, everything else. Nothing's working. Bike is locking us out.
So we love technology. We bashed a bit the active suspension of the Aprilia. I think the active suspension of the Ducati, the Skyhook system, works really well at keeping the bike fairly level despite some aggressive maneuvers. But when you're in the middle of nowhere and you're stranded with your bike that won't start, boy, that gets you worrying. But overall, the Ducati is our favorite one of the bunch, right? It does the breadth of duties that we want from a sport touring bike. The downside is that it costs $20,000. And so we love the Ducati, but you got to have a pretty thick wallet to afford its goodness.
In this instance where, the Ducati does have, electronic technology, but this thing has, cruise control and,
Only one with cruise control?
Right. So, but I couldn't justify the savings in this bike because for myself, there'd be, again, the suspension and the bad fueling. There's too many things that offset this motorcycle. Even then between the two, I mean, I would drop down to save the money on the Kawi because I feel that's a better all-around motorcycle with this lesser technology. So basically, in my mind, I would be willing to go either the base model, or lesser technology by Kawasaki here, or the high-end Ducati. And sorry, Aprilia, but you're left out until you fix some of these gremlins. Again, we got a V-twin 1200, and the Duc's a V-twin 1200. They both have center stands. I'm always a weight fiend, and this thing is very heavy, and you can feel it. And even with better suspension, this would be a better handling motorcycle.
Sure, but again, no center stand. It's another point to talk about. Yep. A little more of a sport bike, no center stand, and I would take the center stand off of both of these if I was going to own them and tour on them, because they are the first things to touch down. If you read touring forums, you'll see, it's got to, half the guys say it's got to be shaft drive. All the guys with chain drive stuff say you need a center stand.
Well, if you got to change a tire on the road, a center stand can be invaluable. So the Kawi sticker is at like $12,000. Add the bags to it, it's another $1,300. So it's, even with the bags, you're the cheapest bike of the bunch. I think the only real downside to the Kawasaki is the amount of legroom. If you're a shorter rider, it's hard to complain about the Kawasaki. I think it's a terrific value.
Wait, Kevin, allow me to complain. There is some severe buzziness you get out of this engine, that high frequency, and it kind of, it's usually above 6,000, 6,500 RPM. It can depend on the gear. I think if you're riding aggressive and you're, up in that rev range, you're going to feel it. And the Ducati has a thump, and Sean and I were talking about this, and I'll take the thump of the Ducati over this, high frequency buzz any day.
Well, the difference, or the distinction I'd like to make is that at cruising speeds, this isn't very buzzy. It's not that you're cruising out on the freeway and it's buzzing and you hate it. It's only once you're revving it up. Right. There's so much to say about these bikes that we can't all fit into a video, so you got to go to Motorcycle.com to read the full story. Got a scorecard, dyno test. So we're gonna saddle back up, head back home, fill out a scorecard, get the full details, and Sean, is there something else you want to say?
Stay classy, San Diego.